return to Mr. Atagoba. Again, for purposes of of clarification, why already the rail system is undergoing some reform. The road, for instance, there's been talk for some years now about the road sector fund. How you get funding and so on and so forth. Now, if the rail system is going to be, as it were, removed from the exclusive list, you're going to have many players. What is wrong with having, again, I mean, you can plead costs, considerations. What is the point? What is the point? What is wrong with having relatively more efficient regulators dealing with each of these? That's what I mean. The point is come up, for instance, between the NBC, that's the National Broadcasting Commission, and the NCC. They all deal with communication. That was the argument that was made. But of course, the media angle is also there, and then that's why you've had them, still separated at the moment. What is wrong with having smaller, more efficient regulators?
There are pros and there are cons.
Yes.
But there are also serious handicaps we have. One is the dearth of capacity. We don't have enough trained hands to go around. And there are synergies that are possible from what exists, from sharing resources. And of course, when we want to integrate modality, it is good that we have level playing field so that the incentives that come from government to the sectors are uniform. For a long time, the railways complained that roads, axle load limits were not being enforced on roads, which meant that you had trucks that were overloaded and no one was regulating that, and yet the railways were supposed to compete on those sort of terms. When you have a single regulator, then it is easier for you to have a harmonized playing field for all of these modes to compete. Because essentially, while you're seeking complementarity in terms of intermodal integration, you're also seeking competition so that they can improve standards and also improve the services that are available to consumers.
Well, while trying to seek out aspects of capacity, you just made mention of the data of capacity in some of these different areas, which is pushing us to look into this. You're also recommending this anchor tenant model approach. What is it about, and how would that help?
Well, again, because we're migrating regulatory resources from so many different MDAs, you are now looking at quite a plethora of regulatory cultures. And therefore, what informs the adoption of the anchor tenant model is that for you to have a nucleus, an agency from which you build the bigger evolution around. And we looked around at the three agencies that would migrate wholesale into the NTC, being the Shippers Council, the Civil Aviation Authority, and the Road Safety. And we had to assess which of these three would be most suited for an anchor tenant. And we came to the conclusion that the Shippers Council provided the best fit. Hence the recommendation that the Shippers Council should be the anchor tenant.
So how would this push for greater competition? Since we're seeking to actually look at the economic value this is going to be adding to us.
Well, in terms of, don't forget, these are not operators, these are regulators. This is the referee.
From regulation, you take a look at what is going to be safe for us, both on the national scene as well as on the international scene.
Yes, absolutely. And it is about robust and effective regulation. One, it gives confidence to investors that the rules by which the game will be played is clear. It also gives them the confidence that the person who will be regulating is identifiable and singular. Whereas in the existing environment, you have various regulators with powers and influence in that particular sector. You remove that confusion and you have greater clarity.
Are you sure the confusion is still not going to be there, especially when we have other legislation coming in terms of other sectors now, which is still going to be answerable to the main regulator, like you said. For multimodal transport space, and of course, two or more are being looked into now. Now, what happens whereby in the process, goods could have suffered some kind of liability, and also falling back on whatever you have now or what you are proposing to have, how do we begin to warehouse some of those areas so we would not get into serious dilemma?
Yes,
in the long run?
just to clarify, when we say that the NTC bill creates, establishes the NTC and its powers in terms of how it regulates the subsectors derived from subsector legislation, it is that if you look in the railway bill, you will find the powers of regulation of the NTC in the railway bill. If you take the Ports and Harbours bill that is under consideration now, you would find the powers that the NTC would have in the Ports and Harbours bill rather than in the NTC bill. So you would find the NTC being named as the regulator for that sector and how it would go about its regulation of that sector in that subsectoral bill. That is essentially the difference, and that is what makes the NTC particularly unique here.
Okay.
All right, that's a point that I would like us to